probably a couple years post-Mormonism, I was like, I spent the first 36 years of my life collecting answers. I want to spend at least the next 36 years collecting questions. That's
That's
it.
the fucking. I'm putting that in the. That's the clip at the beginning of the video.
It's the word. The word?
You're gonna
What
you're
is
gonna
that?
you're gonna see me use this just in case. I've got a knot in my right shoulder that has been like here for I don't know, like a week. So I'll just be rubbing it out occasionally.
Yeah, rub it out, man. Yeah, on the podcast. Have I have a knot in my lower right back too. So like we're here,
Do you have a
America.
do you have a Theragun?
No, no. The fuck is that?
So Google it. It's just this little device that it
There.
vibrates a actually no, fuck it. I'm gonna send you one for Christmas. It's
What? Do whatever you want. Yes, that's great. Thank you.
it's a little device that like vibrates this like massaging head on the top to like work out muscles. So like lower back stiffness or like leg stiffness, you just put it on there and it's just like, I mean, it's humming and it works
All
out
right.
like incredibly well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll accept it, man. I need some humming down there because it's bad. It's like I feel like a big asshole all the time. I'm like grunting and like like when I'm having to like get up from. It's awful.
Yeah, you're too young for that.
If I'm like with my kids, I'm like, ugh, my back hurts. And then my 4-year-old and 3-year-old are like out of context, out of nowhere. We'll
Right.
just be in the car and they'll be like, my back hurts.
Oh God.
Or when they want something,
My
God.
back hurts. Getting gamed. Getting gamed with your own shtick.
Right.
That's
So,
hilarious.
Gentzy, do you know any chants? Any chant? A chant?
Like a Hindu chant or like a
Sure.
not really. I mean, I've done them, but
Mm,
I always have to read along. It's not my
you
thing.
do?
Yeah.
Oh, well, fuck it then. All right. So, welcome to the WRRD Podcast.
I feel like I've already disappointed you.
Gentzy's already disappointed me with his lack of a chant. Uh, this is the WRRD Podcast where we talk about writing, reading, recovery, and discovery. Today, my guest is my brother, my beautiful brother, Gentzy Franz. Gentzy, will you please introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me. It's funny. I was like as we started to kind of shoot the shit at the top, I was like, oh, it's Johnny, my brother. Like my
Right.
brother. It's kind of like felt like chatting with a friend. I think when I think of like you as my brother, you're like six. Probably because there's like, was there 14 years between us?
10.
That's it?
Yeah, but
Wait,
we
did you just turn 35?
I'm 33.
Yeah, that's 12 years.
No.
Yeah, all right. Meet me in the middle. Thank God it wasn't 10. I was gonna feel like a real asshole. We're both wrong, which makes me feel way better. All right, so we're 12 years apart. Yeah, it's like I've got this vision of you as like a little kid, I think because of the space. And now it's like, yeah, I like this. Like I like that I know that you're my brother and I can still see you as that little guy, but you're also, yeah, my friend. And I'm really happy to be here and chatting with you about whatever we chat about. Yeah, I'm Gentzy Franz. I live in Bend, Oregon. It's about 3.5 hours southeast of Portland, right by the Cascade Mountains. I live here with, I guess, just two kids now. Well, I live here with all four of my kids. Two are in college. Brennan is my oldest. He's 22. He's a senior at Whitman College in Washington. Zoe's 19. She's a sophomore or a freshman at Portland State in Portland. Then I have a 16-year-old daughter, Ava, and a 12-year-old daughter, Hazel. Live here in Bend with my ex-wife, Lori. We were married for 17 years. We were high school sweethearts. Our marriage ended in 2017. Yeah, and we've been on the journey to friendship post marriage and co-creating a new version of our family, which is actually quite beautiful and lovely. So we live here now. kind of by way of, I guess, educational and professional background, which will feed into what I do now. My education, I have a PhD in organizational behavior. I think for me, I was always interested in human behavior at work specifically. And why work? Simply because we spend so much fucking time doing it, and it impacts our lives in significant ways, and impacts our identity in a lot of ways. And so I was just really curious about that, which is what took me into my doctoral studies. From there, I kind of went the academic route for a while and taught until I was plucked up out of that ivory tower into the tech world in Chicago. And it was there that my kind of whole world blew up, um, in
Mm.
in violent ways and good ways. Violent ways, it was because I made that career transition at a time like a year after we left the Mormon church. Um,
Wow.
Johnny could tell you I was a very good Mormon, like world class. And when I say that, I
Class.
mean like, yeah, I was like very obedient and I did the thing and like looked the part and served in all the right ways. And it was a really super important part of my life. And it dictated the way that I saw others, the way that I saw myself, the way that I saw this world and the afterlife. And when that was taken away, it was extremely disorienting. So I had this big, massive kind of career transition and personal transition at the same time. It resulted in me being really, really scared and lost for a long time. I still kept my shit together because I have an inflated self-confidence, and kind of knew what abilities to lean on, but it was really, really scary. That's when my marriage to Lori ended, which, maybe we'll get back to that. Maybe we won't. That was devastating to me, for a variety of reasons that required me to really reflect on life and kind of like what I'm going to teach my kids now. I knew what to teach them within the context of Mormonism. Outside of that, I didn't. And it was super scary. And I didn't even know what was real or true or, yeah, fill in the blank. During this time, I was assigned an executive coach in Chicago who was working with kind of all of the leaders in the tech company that I worked for. And his name was Jim Dethmer. He has a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And he, he was a former pastor and he has gray hair and he's well spoken. So, the Mormon kid in me was just like, oh shit, finally, I've got a new prophet, and thank God he has a book. And so I latched onto him like that. What I loved about what Jim did with me is he like rejected that. He wouldn't allow me to. And every time he saw me trying to do that, he would catch it because he kind of knew me well enough and pushed me into, you've been seeking external guidance and validation your entire life. It's time to actually look in. Like what's true for you, what's real inside, and then use that as the filter through which you make sense of the world. And
Holy shit. That's
and
so amazing.
so amazing, but like also like I was like, I know myself, and I remember even telling him this when we were walking in a parking garage in Chicago. I was like, I know myself. And he was like, who are you? And I was like, and I started talking about all the things that I do.
Oh,
And he was like,
yeah.
all good things, but that's just what you do. And I was like, no, 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 that's who I am. He was like, that's not who you are. And what I realized kind of in that moment is like I had no idea what I wanted. I had no idea what my values were. I had no idea like who I was beyond like this like physical body, this self that like had become super important to me and is so important to everybody. And not that it's unimportant, but it's not everything. And he just kept like, and he was harsh with me. Like it was not an easy process to go through because and it's something that I had never experienced with a spiritual leader before. It's kind of like do A, B, and C, and then we'll validate you, we'll reward you, we'll make you feel good. And not to mention, you'll get the ultimate reward afterwards if you do A, B, and C. And so I was like, fuck, I can do that. That's easy. That's just discipline. I'm good at that. He wouldn't play that game and really sent me down a different path of incredible reflection, incredibly uh yeah, like some pretty uncomfortable realizations about just about like how I move through the world. And I don't think I was ever an asshole. Um, but there were things that I would do that impacted myself and others in ways that uh where I could see the consequences. And these are we're talking subtleties, I'm not I yeah, I didn't have like anger issues. I didn't have like there were no addictions that I had to overcome. That's some people's journey. Mine was like there were just little things that had to get rewired and kind of refined. And it was really uncomfortable to see and to embrace my role in creating those outcomes. It's very easy to be like, fuck that person and fuck this and fuck Mormonism and all that stuff, as
Right.
opposed to, oh my God, like what am I doing to create some of this inner turmoil or external turmoil? And that just sent me down a path, which I imagine we'll get into. So I won't continue sharing at this point. Yeah, just like incredible reflection. I kind of as my time in tech was winding down, I was like, what's my next chapter going to be? And, as I kind of took stock of like what my life was and the things that I knew I was good at and the things that I wanted to do, it was kind of this confluence of academics practically working in a very high intense work environment. And then this new, what I'll just call journey with consciousness, which I'm imagining into, and then bringing all those together. And it just so happens, and this doesn't make me like better than or anything else, I'm an incredible teacher. I know that. Like
Shit, yeah.
whether I was a Mormon missionary or whether I was a professor or whatever else, it's just, or whether I'm teaching my kids something, it's just what I do. Like it's just Johnny and I come from a long line of pastors and academics, and I think it's in the blood a little bit. And so, for me, what made sense was executive coaching. And so that's what I do now. I've been doing that solo for the past 6 years. I partner with other people, and really, what my work is involved in is bringing elements of consciousness into the workplace. I'm always sensitive to, because this is, you can go to San Francisco and throw a stone and find a guy like me, because there's an obsession with Buddhism. There's an obsession with consciousness, I think, in the mainstream, and I think it can get bastardized at times. Um, what I try to do is just make it really practical and kind of take what I know without trying to like be a snake oil salesman or a charlatan of taking, religious principles and like bringing them into capitalism. My belief I don't have a problem with capitalism. I certainly don't think it's perfect whatsoever. And I do think that it makes people crazy. And so my work with leaders is how can we like be aware of the crazy that exists within all of us in our heads and that causes us to do things and have an impact that we actually don't want or intend. Impact on us and impact on others and impact on the world around us. So that's what my work is now. And that's what I do. I work with individuals and one-on-one coaching. Then I do, group work as well with teams. I also run retreats for some of my clients, and then run broader retreats, typically focused on supporting men. Yeah, that's kind of the portfolio of my work. First and foremost, I'm a dad, father of four. As everything was melting away, and Johnny, I know you can relate to this as well, because we have the benefit of like a long line of like really good men, especially on the paternal side of our family. Really good grandfather who was highly involved in our lives. Really good father who was highly involved in our lives. They're not perfect, but they're good men, and they cared about their families. And so I think for me, like as everything else melted away, and when I say everything else melted away, like fucking everything, like except dad, like every identity was shedding, and I had to sit with, do I want to be a dad? Which was
Wait, you mean every identity that you identified with, besides your what you had identified in yourself as dad? You're not talking about our dad, right? You're talking
No,
about
no, yeah, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Me. So like every way that I saw myself, every identity, every hat that I wore, like fell away. Like it just like melted away. And I would try to grasp some, but it was like, you know, it was like holding sand and it would go. And I had to play with like, because I was in such a state of inquiry, like, do I even want to be a father? Which which is a rough question to ask for kids.
Right.
And but I asked it because I had to, because I was questioning everything. And you know, it was like 2 minutes later, I was like, fuck off. Like this is your favorite thing. It's the thing that keeps you grounded. Like let everything else go. Like, but this, like, so I say that both as kind of a critical part of, yeah, like a core of who I am, but also just like so grateful because while everything else was going, it was like that was the anchor. Yeah.
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 Okay. And that was all like 2017, around that area?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Yeah. 2015 was the I think it all started to kind of in 2015, January of 2015, when we made the intentional decision to leave the Mormon church. That was like the starting point that everything started to go.
oh my God, dude.
And then it amplified in 2016, 2017. And it was, you know, I think back on that time and it was rapid. Like, you know me, I'm pretty quick, like in general, just like whatever it is, I'm just gonna like there's an intensity. And yeah, there was an intensity to blowing up my life. Uh that like looking back on super scary because I didn't have the scaffolding in place. Some people like they have things to lean on as their life is like blowing up. I didn't. And I got it like probably just in the nick of time.
In the form of that guy in Chicago.
Yeah.
What was his name again?
Jim Dethmer.
Jim Dethmer.
Dethmer.
So, gosh, there's so much in there that like I'm like looking at my questions and I'm like, I want to ask 13 questions about all the shit you just said, man. But I guess first of all, I'd like to touch on the idea of everything kind of all these identities kind of washing away. And like, you know, me and Aaron, my wife, often joke about the Buddha leaving his family because we're like,
what a dick.
I know, because like we're like, oh yeah, all these great teachings, and I'm like, yeah, but you like didn't stay to do the hard fucking thing. Like I'm bending over and grunting because of back pain, and you're sitting there learning how to do lotus, like, you know, and your back doesn't hurt because your hips are fucking perfect, everything's great, you know. But yeah, no shit, you left your family, and the people are like, he cried the day that his chapel was burned, or the temple, or wherever, the castle, wherever the fuck he lived. They're like, he was crying, and I'm like, fuck him. I hope he cried. I hope he felt awful about himself. Oh, you fucking, yeah. Anybody could be like, it's nothing. Anyway,
right.
So I really admire. I think that's like a self-preservation technique against the idea of gurus, and like taking one of these things to be because I have a tendency to do that, where I will be really intense about a thing to the point where I will be like, I will make it very much not fun. And like the thing that I always think of in my head, and this is awful and crass, but feel free to turn off the video for this portion. But I always think of like, you know, shitting blood. Like that's where I get to when with these things, with Buddhism or something like that, where I'm like, I've got to fucking do it. And I did the same thing when I was little, like when I was trying to have a testimony, and like I just like I couldn't. And I was like a little kid, like praying and like hoping and like, you know, and jerking off, and then like being like, I gotta stop jerking off, and like pray for help to quit jerking off. And I, you know, anyway, so I'll get there with the stuff that I'm interested in like today in my life. And so I gotta like watch it. So I feel like that's a pretty like healthy healthy balance is to be like, yeah, Buddhism is great, but like also the dude left his fucking family. So like kind of fuck him too. Um, and that's kind of how I balance my tendency to get into a cult and take it too seriously, and I ruin the fucking thing for myself. Um, so I want to talk about that for just a minute. Is how when these different layers were leaving you, and you chose I'm going to stick with the father one. So did you also let other ones stay too? And this is incredibly interesting to me because, like, in the 12 steps, there's a similar process to what you're describing. And it happens in like steps 6 and 7, where you look at your character defects or whatever you want to call them, shortcomings, and you say, these are the ones I like, or these ones are actually assets. And these are the ones that I'm no longer, I would like to shed myself of them or accept them or whatever the fuck. So were there other ones that you have since kind of like brought back or have incorporated or something?
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I think, there's always been like an openness and a curiosity to me. Even as kind of as dogmatic as I was in my approach to Mormonism, I was very curious. I was very curious about the world. I was very open to learning. And so I think, this constant desire to learn about myself and about the world around me. Now, so within Mormonism, like there were constraints around questions that I could ask or experiences I could have or ways that I could investigate or doubts that I could even voice. And so that was there, but it was kind of constrained. And I think what I allowed kind of through this process was, oh, wait, that's an aspect of myself that's always been there. It's just been a little small. Let's make it big. Let's make it bigger. And so I like to think of like some of the things that I like on this other side, look back on and they like, those things were always a part of me. Let them, they need to breathe a little bit more. And other parts of me need to die. And so there is, I mentioned this there, I'm confident. I just am. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we were up at the mountain and my dog, like snowboarding, I was snowboarding with Zoe, my 19-year-old, and my dog ran up onto the snowbank and she like couldn't get down. And she was like kind of freaking out of like, how do I get off the snowbank? So I was like, in kind of my gusto and my confidence, I just like took off of the snowbank and like put my foot on a ledge and then was going to like hop up onto the top. I'm athletic. I can do this. And I did it. And as soon as I did it, the whole wall just like caved. And this guy was watching and, I didn't hurt myself, but it was like, clearly I didn't, meet my objective. And this guy was like, wow, you really did that confidently. I was like, yeah, this is a metaphor for life for me. And, it's just like, oh yeah, like here's what needs to be done. I'm going to go do it. And, there's like, I can bite off more than I can chew or like attack something with like confidence when it's like, oh, actually be a little bit more measured. I say all that to say something that I've shed is with that confidence came a righteousness. I was right about, I'll pick some of my favorites. I was right about how you raise kids. I was right about how you see God. I was right about what you do in this life to create happiness for yourself. I was right about, I could keep going on and on, but that was part of me. It was part of me. And it was corollary to my confidence. I wanted to shed that completely and be like, that sounds fun right now. Just like flip a switch, be like, great. I don't want to be right anymore. Like that is like, like the tentacles of that one. And if you think about it, righteousness, which was a part of who I was, is it's just a form of self-protection. It's just, there are scary things to me in the world. And so I'm going to make those scary things wrong. And I'm going to be right about the fact that those things are wrong because I'm scared of them. And if you really get curious, you go, oh, I'm scared of myself. I'm scared of myself in this world. I'm scared of myself feeling emotions. I'm scared that if I make a mistake, that everything's going to come crumbling down. I'm scared of, and the list goes on and on and on. My favorite, I won't quote Ram Dass on the ego. I think, there's lots of quotes out there by him on the ego or others on the ego or, but my favorite quote is from Quincy Jones on the ego. And he said, the ego is just an overdressed insecurity. And what I love about that is that we all have an ego. It's necessary for us to survive. And it gets overactive, it gets overly protective, and then it starts detecting threat in the world too sensitively. And when we do that, then everything becomes a protection. And so there were lots of protections that I used. Religion was probably the biggest one for me, where it was just a protection from everything that was scary outside and inside. And if I could just if I could create some layers between everything that was going on inside, because, I'm your brother and kind of in our genes runs some fairly complex, a fairly complex system. And it's emotional, it's intellectual, there's a lot going on. And it scared me. And so could I create space there? Could I create space from the things in the world that scared me? And yeah, I was making parts of myself small. So there was this curious part, there was this very open part. There's also, and I look back on my high school self as like almost an example that I go to sometimes. I was I was how do I put it?
Sexy.
Well, for sure. But like I was rebellious within a container. I wasn't rebellious like you were rebellious, but I was like long hair, kind of like a little bit of a fucking attitude in like a very measured kind of way. And I look back on that and that was just like, I am very, very rebellious. I have a very, very intense wild side. And through my work kind of with internal family systems, I was able to understand these different parts of me and where some of them were just completely pushed aside, put in a box, where some of them were a little bit too active, and then allowing them to understand that those were all parts of me and how could they dance a little bit more. So that's a long way of saying like, identity, but I would kind of point to those things as like a part of my identity that I left, and then parts of my identity that were always there, but that were small that I let grow a little bit and learn to kind of play with. This is, shadow work, et cetera, which, probably your listeners are, and you're familiar with. That's all part of it.
Well, it's brilliant, man. Because like there's sometimes it's hard to understand. And with this stuff, it's all very elusive. So it's like as soon as you think you got a hold on how shadow work actually works, then whatever the fuck happens, you got a back pain, and you yell at your kids about it. So you forget all about any of this shit. So it's like it's very. I feel like the way you worded that made it very easy to understand. I like how you're talking about the wild side and kind of taking that and like. At least it sounded to me like you were saying that you took it and kind of like you're taking these things and nurturing them and honoring them. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Where like something like having a wild side might seem like to have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
Where we're actually looking at that as this is a piece of me that's actually good, and how can I work with it?
Bingo. Because if I don't, it's gonna get expressed. It's gonna come out in sideways ways. And I think for me, part of what led to the demise of my marriage was I had an affair. And like I was talk about righteousness. I was not the guy who did that. I fucking hated that guy. Like there were archetypes that I could look at. I hated addicts too. You bore the brunt of that. To me, it was weakness. And that was my righteousness. Fucking get over yourself. Keep your dick in your pants. Like, don't fucking smoke the weed. What, like, on and on and on. Those lived in me so real. And so then I became that guy. I was like, what the fuck? And it was and I did all of that in the shadows. Like, there was nobody like, nobody knew about it. And it was all me. And so then it was, I'm a bad person. And I knew I shouldn't have let that part of me out. Like, and now I'm creating a fucking mess of my family and a fucking mess of myself and all of this other stuff, as opposed to, with space now, I can see, yeah, that guy was boxed up and he burst out. And it was violent and it was deceptive and it was gnarly and it was hurtful and it was full of betrayal, as opposed to now it's like, If I box that guy up, he's going to kick my ass and people are going to get hurt. Most importantly, myself. And
fuck.
how can I let him play so that he doesn't do that? How can I give him breath? What do I need to do in order to make sure that that part of me gets nurtured? Because if it doesn't, he's a motherfucker and he will destroy in order to be fed. Now, pretty impressive. Like when I look back on it, knowing how strong that part in me is, that I could keep him boxed up, and that just kind of speaks to my righteousness and my discipline, which is strong. But there was a cost to that. You know, there was a cost to that. Parts of me were not being expressed, and I look back on it now with like reverence of like, thank you for busting out. Like I had to fall. Like I hadn't, I mean, you know this, like I really had not experienced a challenge that rocked me till I was 36, 37. I kept it locked up until then, and saw anybody else that struggled with depression, addiction, fill in the blank, as like they just couldn't keep their shit together.
Right.
If only they did A, B, and C, everything would be fine. So fuck them. Except it wouldn't say fuck them then. I would have been like, bless their heart, you know, or whatever positive spin I would have put on it. But it was just righteousness. And it was literally protecting me and what I intuitively knew about me. And it was like, I can't touch that. And you know, we see that in our family of origin of some things you don't touch.
Oh, it's terrifying, dude. Like having this like for me, the experience that I had with it was a kind of spiritual experience that happened to me during meditation, where I was like, I was in this dark closet and I was listening to some crazy cringy meditation by Joe Dispenza, where he was like, you know,
into the 3, into the 4.
Yeah, dude. And he's like, clench your asshole, you know. But I mean, he's not saying that, but that's what I interpreted it. And then like you breathe it up into the crown of your head, and then you hold it, be present, you know. And like anyway, but it did something, because like during that, like after I was done, I like had this vision of this horse, and it was like bucking and being wild and crazy, and like I have no idea. Like if somebody told me this story, if somebody told me, yeah, I saw a horse while I was meditating and I you know, I wept in my closet, I would be like, what the fuck, dude? But yeah, I was sitting there in this like pitch black, and I'd made sure it was all pitch black, and I was meditating a lot at that time. And yeah, I saw this horse and just lost it in my closet, just crying. And I felt like I was seeing that element that you're describing in you, that's in me, that's in you know, other members of our family, and where there's this like element of like losing control of oneself, and also like at the same time, it's that thing that you're talking about where you went and jumped to get your dog from the snowbank, where you're just like, I'm fucking going, I'm doing it, and like you just went for it. I feel like those two things kind of play into each other, and for me, that's led to like a lot of grief with addiction, with, you know, ending up in like a 5 or 6 year, I don't remember how long, but heroin addiction, which 5 or 6 years of heroin addiction is pretty destructive. You don't have to do 30 years of it, but but it's also led to like all these wonderful things, all these wonderful projects that I've made in art. So that's like where I kind of nurture. I always think of it as the horse now, ever since that kind of meditation experience. But that's how I kind of nurture my horse. Is I kind of like, I'm like, all right, yeah, but you can fuck shit up over here, writing a bunch of books or making a bunch of music, things like that, or, you know, starting a podcast where everyone's 2 hours long. So what do you have any thoughts on that? How do you, yeah, What can you give us an example of where you take that energy, I guess, that kind of, I don't want to call it addictive energy but that kind of tendency maybe, and let it go, let it run wild.
Yeah. First, I just want to say, like, I love the visual of the horse. I mean, I knew the importance of the horse to you. I don't know that I knew like the origin story there. And that's super, super cool. And I think that like those things are, you know, you talk about never getting an answer to your prayers. Like you got an answer to your prayer, like in that,
Right.
because
Holy
I
shit.
think exactly answers to our prayers don't come in the way that we think, and we were prescribed a certain way of how prayers get answered. And a horse, it's just like that's not an answer to a prayer, and yet like it's become a Patronus to use like Harry Potter, like something that you can follow, something that you've given meaning to, something that's
Totally.
deeply meaningful. So anyway, I just wanted to like I love knowing the origin story for that, and that you finally got your answered prayer after jerking off so much. So the I think for me a few things. The wild one in me, like I have to allow myself to have extreme experiences.
Oh, wow.
And I need those, and there's a level of control that I bring to those experiences. So I'm kind of down for whatever. Like I really am. I'm also really, really mindful of how those experiences feel to me and what I'm going to do again and what I'm not. But I rarely say, now there's something, I say no to heroin, but there's certain things that I'm just like, let's go do that. I mean, I live in the West. I live 30 minutes from a mountain, like screaming down a mountain on a snowboard, going fast and like hitting jumps and like chasing my kids. That's wild. That's like where that's like that part of me gets to play. It just gets to go. Going to concerts and dancing is like it's a release for me. And I used to be self-conscious about how I dance, or I dance a certain way. I don't now. Like it's free movement, and I let the music move me. I don't even know if you know this yet, but I've started to play the djembe. And not just like bang it, but like actually learn how to play it. And there's a release that I get in that's wild. It's primal, because I think what we're pointing to, and why animals often come, why animals are Patronuses in Harry Potter, et cetera, they're fucking wild, and they speak to the wildness inside of us and allow us, they give us a kind of a roadmap to follow, essentially. And animals do what they want, and I'll watch my dog move an emotion. My dog will feel a big emotion, and then immediately she'll shake. And so there's this idea of, how can I be in my body? My mind is active, like it is sharp. It's something I've realized actually with age. It's like well, I'm smart, and that was never part of my identity before. I had probably another identity that I've kind of taken. It was like, oh, I'm smart, and I just always thought of myself as like a funny jock, like was also like a virgin. Like that was like my identity, is like, or like righteous. Like those were my identities. And now it's like, no, I got to let those other parts of me like play. Poetry, writing poetry has been a huge part of kind of my wildness getting expressed. Really being radically open with my kids. Zoe, my 19-year-old, is in the other room. She might hear this, and she's not going to hear anything new on this podcast that she hasn't already heard me say. And
Wait, you said being really open with your kids,
yeah,
helps you experience that wild nature of yourself. And
bingo.
okay, wow,
Totally.
that's
Yeah.
fucking
And
amazing.
having experiences with them, like traveling with them, like just really opening myself up to the world. And then I'd say that, the final thing that I'll say on this, of like the wild one in me,
Yeah.
um, is, my experiences with psychedelics, which have taken me to, pretty mystical places, scary places. I say that because my moral aversion to drugs of any kind was so strong. I was joking with the kids about this the other day. Brennan's, my oldest, is doing finals right now, and we were kind of joking back and forth about something. And I was like, I just want you to know, I got through a PhD with 4 kids, no caffeine, no alcohol, no Adderall. And it was like, and not like, look what I did. More of like, isn't that fucking insane?
Oh yeah.
And it's because I had, there was that's the righteousness. And I'm going to stay away from this. What I've found as I've kind of gradually let that down, because my first experiences dabbling in that world were super fucking scary to me, because they were trying to get through the protective barrier that I had created, which was the moral aversion.
Right.
And once I got through that, talk about being in your body, opening your mind up to all kinds of possibilities, has really been a transformational experience for me. And it's a place where, yeah, I'm still controlling in a lot of ways. Like there's an aspect of me that's very controlled, that's very measured. Psychedelics, that drops like completely. And I've had to learn how to be comfortable in that space with all of my guards down, with all of my controls down, and be okay.
Mm.
Can I find myself? Can I find my center? Can I find my gratitude? Can I find my breath? Can I find what's real? Like these hands, when everything is like flipping. And, sure, I could take mushrooms and go dance at a fish show too. That's fun. But that's
Is it fun to dance at a fish show?
I think.
You think so?
Oh yeah. Like the vibe is great. I mean, I'm probably more of like a Dead. Like I like Dead and Co probably better than like a Fish show. And there's other bands that I actually like to dance to way more than that, but that's probably just a cliche example I was like reaching for.
Oh yeah, no, I have to. Whenever somebody brings up Fish, I have to talk shit about it.
They're intolerable. Fish heads are intolerable.
Okay, good. If I was at a Fish show though, dancing, I would probably have a great time. But
great time.
Yeah, the idea of Fish, I just have to.
Yeah, it's like they can't listen to any other music. It's like, oh my God, this is your religion. Congratulations. You did the thing you're saying is fucked up everywhere else. I hope some of my friends who are fish heads like actually listen to this.
Yeah, it's that beer. It's some beer commercial or something. It's cartoon where the guy starts here and he's like, it's what life is, and he's like, ah! And then he ends up back like, I don't
know. Totally. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's beautiful, man. Yeah, let's jump over here. I feel like we did. This is why I like to send people the questions ahead of time. Actually, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, so I have no reason for doing it. But now that I've seen the result, I'm going to take credit for an intention ahead of time. This is why I send these questions to my guests ahead of time, so that we have kind of a stew going on for conversation,
Totally.
But there are some of these that I do want to hit. So what was the moment you knew? Like when you stopped being a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, or stopped being a Mormon? What was there a moment when you like realized, or if you're comfortable talking about it, like what was the conversation you had with your wife at the time, or was there an inciting incident for that?
Mormonism specifically?
Yes.
It was a slow build. And there were a few things that were going on. The first one was kind of the church's position on LGBTQ rights. I was growing increasingly uncomfortable with it. The conversation was happening externally in the church, and the conversation inside the church, they were at odds. And at times they were politically at odds, and the church was putting money behind fighting certain things that would have granted rights to human fucking beings. I could not, I couldn't reconcile that. I couldn't reconcile. Right. It's like, we're talking about sex. That's it. how a person chooses to have sex. That's it. Go fuck yourself. Like I couldn't reconcile it. So that's number one. Number two, we were raising 3 girls, and we were both becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the messages that they were implicitly picking up as part of the community that we were a part of. I'm not one to hate Mormonism, because I think it does so much good and I think it's so beautiful in so many ways.
Sure.
First thing that I said is objective. It's just like it is at odds with certain human rights, period. Like they've got a lot of mental gymnastics and a lot of words to like say that they're not, but like it doesn't check out with me. So that there is a way that all people, men and women, are empowered within Mormonism, within a lot of religions, and there is a way that there are inequities, and there are inequities just factually between men and women within Mormonism. And there are messages that our girls receive that I could teach. Lori, my ex-wife, and I could teach our girls a certain way in the house, but we became increasingly concerned with what they would pick up and maybe see what we taught at odds with what the authority was saying. And that those lessons would creep in, that, kind of how they saw their body, of like, sexual purity is so important within Mormonism, yet we're objectifying little girls by telling them they can't wear tank tops or that they need to cover their bodies. That is objectification. And that is the very thing that they say they want to move away from, except that they're reinforcing it by saying, here's what you can and can't do. No, that does not fucking work for me, and I can't reconcile it. So I think that those were 2 very, very fundamental things that were pushing us towards it. The final one is where, probably, practicing Latter-day Saints would take issue with, and that's fine. Like the first 2 I would stand behind and I would fucking fight for those 2 things. The third one is just, we were missing out on experiences that this world could provide, both in terms of connection with people outside of the Mormon community, seeing people in certain ways. If you talk about this righteousness, as kind and wonderful as Mormons are, there is a righteousness and a judgment that comes along with it.
Sure.
Period. And that's not unique to Mormonism. That's like any group, right. That's just any group. And we wanted to have different experiences. You may not know this, but Lori and I, probably 3 before we started, before we left Mormonism, I was like, let's drink alcohol.
This was 3 or 4 years before you left?
Yeah. But let's not tell anybody. And I'm going to keep a spreadsheet that like tracks like how we feel, and like, again, kind of like the controller in me. And so like on weekends, it was actually really sweet. And Lori, by the way, she grew up Catholic. She was never really bought into Mormonism. Like I actually love her for this. She did it for me. I think Lori knew that she knew I'd be a good dad. I think she knew I'd be a good partner. I think she knew we would create a beautiful life together, and we did. And so she was willing to kind of remove herself from a very thick Catholic tradition in order to become Mormonism, but it was never her bag. When we left, she was like, oh, thank God. And I was like, oh my God, where's God? It's 2 very different experiences. But before that, we started drinking. She was so excited, and I'd mix cocktails and I'd keep a spreadsheet of how I felt. I had my first hangover and I was like, oh my God, God does not like vodka. And there was a column of like, how do I feel like spiritually as I partake in this? And that was kind of going on. And then there were people that we wanted to be in relationship with and deep connection with. And we felt that there was a barrier between us, mostly because of my righteousness. I won't say this about Lori, my righteousness.
Those were people you wanted to swing with, correct? That's
Thank God that never became part of our practice. I don't know that I could have. I don't know that my sweet little brain could have handled that. Yeah, no Secret Lives of Mormon Wives tales here, unfortunately. And
this is much better.
Yeah, exactly. And that we wanted to experience the world, and we wanted our kids to experience the world. That was really exciting and really terrifying to me. And all the terror and all the delight and excitement, all of those were validated kind of in what followed. Yeah.
Wow, man. Okay. Well, thank you for that. That's
man, so then I will say this. the Saturday before we left the church formally and never went back, I was a leader in the church. I can teach, I can speak well, and I nobody knew I was drinking alcohol, and so I looked the part, and was given opportunity to teach a lot, and I was asked to speak in front of a group of 300 men on a Saturday, men and boys, about what it means to be a man, and I knew the end was near, and I accepted. And I got to the pulpit, and the stake presidency, which is like the regional leadership, is sitting behind me. And I started the talk out by saying, I don't know what it means to be a man, but I do know that 20% of the boys and men sitting in this congregation are gay. And
fuck up, dude.
And I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes with scripture and kind of my own beliefs on how you're no less of a man or a boy than the 80% that's not.
Oh
and
my God.
I could feel the shifting behind me, but I'm too fucking smart. And so everything was biblical or Book of Mormon, and I was weaving in and out. And that was Saturday. We went to church next Sunday, and I had it's like emotional because it's like my attitude while I was within Mormonism, as it was like shifting for me, was like, I'm going to change it from the inside. I'm influential. I can make an impact. And I realized like, that's me being overly confident. Like this is hundreds of years of like intense creation and control, and a system that is protected and sacred to so many people, and to change it is hard, and it takes a lot of time. And but that Sunday, two men came up to me who I knew were gay. Like they knew they were gay, but they were still Mormon, and they were married to women and doing their thing. And they thanked me. And then three other men came up to me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, your words yesterday may have like changed how my son sees himself." And I knew who these boys were. Like that's the other thing. Like I knew intimately who some of the people in the congregation I was speaking to. And then I didn't know others. I was just, pulling statistics. And but to know, like, to hear that was like, that to me was like the final. I did what I could do, and all of us can only do what we can do when we're inside of systems. But it was a special moment for me, and it was my last like Mormon hurrah.
Yeah. I mean, did you feel fucking God, dude? Did you feel heartbroken like in that moment, and then kind of like, and then like you couldn't, like you had helped in a way, right? In
Yeah.
a very small, beautiful way. But like, did you feel like also like it's not, these are the teachings. Like, why are we all here then? Was there that kind of a feeling too?
Totally. There was that. There was also like, I'm gonna remove myself from this, and I do not know what comes next. So I was terrified. I also felt like I was letting my community down, because I knew like I talked in a different way, and I could thread the needle. I could like appease the powers that be, and also speak to the fringe. And I can bob and weave, and not everybody can do that within Mormonism. I could, and I valued that, and I knew other people valued it. And so when I left, I was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not that like, not because I'm like special, but just because I have a certain ability, and I know that like other people who don't, they rely on people like us to kind of make sense of the tension and the reconciliation that's required to remain a part of a system when they don't align completely. And so I felt,
Well,
I felt bad.
absolutely. You were special. I mean, you're providing this this lubricant,
Yeah.
right? With your personality, which comes from, I believe, very loving place within you, where
Yeah.
you're able to kind of guide, like in a negative situation, you're fucking great because you can. So yeah, I can imagine you feeling that way because like it's not only that you're aware of that part of yourself,
Totally.
and so you're aware of what you were withdrawing, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I think we
from these
all.
people you love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love them, and I there are parts of like Jesus's teachings that like still live as capital T truths within me, and like
Yeah.
hiding your candle under a bushel is one of them, and all that is like we all have gifts, and like let your light shine. Like it's cliche and it's kind of like a silly analogy, but like I believe in that. I still believe in that. I like look at you and like the way that you've embraced and expanded and evolved like your creative gifts. Like all that is like, yeah, your candle's not under a bushel. And you're just like, you're letting it shine. And like when we do that, we do give light to others. And then that creates the oneness that I think all of us are after, that Jesus taught, that all the great teachers teach, but that is completely compromised by an us versus them, which is rooted in our ego and is rooted in all this self-protection that I've talked about. And so, we need one another. Like we just do, just like, you can look into a forest, like all those plants need one another. It's a symbiotic relationship where they depend on one another and they support one another. And humans are no different, except we are because of our protective mechanisms.
Well, what I'm getting from you is that it's actually more egoic, which this is contrary to the normal the normal accepted belief of what an ego is, but is that it's more egoic to not acknowledge that thing within you that you know is good.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
That's fucking awesome, dude. I I really have never thought about it like that before. Where knowing what you bring to the table is not egoic; it's actually compassionate almost.
Bingo. Bingo. And it can become egoic, right? I mean,
Right, right, yeah,
it certainly can. So it's a slippery slope for sure. And even with some of the egos that I deal with in my work, I don't think it's like that guy has a massive ego, that guy has I don't know. Like I just know
right.
each of us land in a body and have a set of experiences. And I'll come back to your horse. I look at like all of this stuff that's inside of us that's up here. It's a fucking stallion. And some of us have fucking stallions that we have to like, they're wild horses that we have to learn to ride. And that's the ego. The ego is never going to go away. Like we don't want the horse, we don't want the wildness of the horse or the intensity of the horse to go away, but we do want to ride it. So when you're breaking a wild horse, and there's actually some of the retreats I do is at a horse ranch up in Portland, and I watch what they do and how they work with these horses. It's fucking incredible. And and some of us we all have different, based on trauma, based on genetics, et cetera, et cetera. We all have different horses that we have to learn to ride. And to me, that's just the ego, as opposed to just like letting it run free. That's not gonna serve me, and it's not gonna serve the world around me.
Fuck. So how do how? So you're I struggle, man, because I'm like my mind's like getting blown, and so then I tend to like get stuck on like a thing because I want help with this specific thing because it's hard for me to understand or to learn balance with that, the idea of the horse and breaking it, and like how to, like we were talking about a little bit before we started, food, like how do I eat well and like let that part of me that's like wants to experience life and like is like I deserve to fucking experience a sugary treat. Like how how do I experience the sugary treat and then like not then go to like, well, I deserve to experience 10 sugary treats because I'm just experiencing life and man, I'm just here and I'm in it, you know?
Yeah, totally. I don't know that I have a perfect answer for this. The thing that I'll say is just
Yeah.
we continually coming back to ourselves? Like, how does this make me feel? I don't care who told me it was good for me or it was bad for me. Like, how do I feel? How do I feel, emotionally? I'll use alcohol as a good example for me. Um, it was kind of my first like rebellion, inside of Mormonism, and frankly, something I enjoy. Like, I like having a beer. I love mixing cocktails. Like, I just do. It's like cooking for me, which I also love. It's a creative endeavor.
Yeah.
Uh, and I have to check in. Like, I have to check in, like, how did I feel after consuming that? How did I feel after a week? If I look back and I'm like, I had 10 drinks this week. How does my body feel? How do I feel emotionally? How am I sleeping? Like, it just, to me, it's just coming back. So it's just like, eliminate the stories. Who the fuck cares? Who the fuck
Okay.
cares what the fill in the blank says about alcohol consumption, or what this is or what that is? How do I feel? How am I relating to people that I love? How am I relating to myself? How do I feel about myself? And I think we can do that with anything. I think we can do that with drugs. I think we can do that with food. I think we can do that with religion. I think we can, as long as we're thoughtful and we come back to ourselves, because I believe that we just have the answers, and that our bodies and our minds are designed to keep us going, and that anything can be a drug or a medicine, and medicine keeps us going. It expands us. Drugs hold us back. They can, and I'm not going to make any distinction between the substance, because the substance is the fucking same. It's just, how do we relate to them? How do we reflect upon them? How do we,
Fuck.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that to me is like, this about me. Like, that is me 10 years ago. I have no concept of that. I can't even entertain it. And
Yeah,
now,
it's black or white, right?
black or white, totally.
And now you're more able to live in the ambiguous dance of it all.
Yeah. When I, probably a couple years post Mormonism, I was like, I spent the first 36 years of my life collecting answers. I want to spend at least the next 36 years collecting questions.
That's the fucking, I'm putting that in that's the clip at the beginning of the video.
Magic, right? I mean, and that's exciting, because then we're just asking, kind of this faux openness and curiosity that I had before, that was there, but it wasn't fully expressed. Now it gets to be fully expressed. And it makes me a better father. It makes me I think, a better human. Certainly makes me a better brother. And I think makes me good at what I do. The skills, the abilities, the skills were always there. Like, that's just like, that's just my wiring. That's just who I am. Those were there, but they're like channeled in a different way now. So like, I can sit in front of a client, they can tell me literally anything. I don't get rattled. Like, I do not get rattled. I don't get rattled by the human experience now, the broad range of it. And that's just because I'm willing to ask questions and willing to really understand what's underneath it, what's underneath me and my behavior, my thinking, et cetera, and everybody else, recognizing that everybody's on their own journey. And like, I see now, looking at you as a really good example, like the role that your heroin addiction, which, like, by the way, was like, I know, like, so hard for you, and like transformational, like brutal, and like scary, and like also kind of fun, like all these other things.
Yeah.
And look, I like your heroin addiction was like a like really like it shaped me. Like, it really did. Um, and it wasn't until I started asking questions about it and getting curious about it and open about it, that I was able to, that I can look at it now and see, like, oh, that was a gift for you. That was your journey. I hate it that it was, like, because there were near-death experiences. There was like turmoil. There was like self-loathing. There was all this stuff that came along with it. And I can look back on it, just like I can look back at the end of my marriage or my affair and go, I see the gift. I see the gift. And that's our journey. But we don't understand it as such until we get curious and open. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, man. Cause like, yeah, I find myself with others, very closed off, you know. Not all the time, but like if somebody comes to me and they are often negative, I tend to formulate an opinion that becomes like rock solid about that person. And
Totally.
then there's a little bit about me that's like fucking whatever. It's your fault now. Like, why don't you like you were saying the A, B, and C thing? I'm like, okay, why do you continue to participate in the problem? I I either gave you a solution or you know the solution or whatever the fuck it is. And like I cannot hear them.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. I started doing these podcasts and it's so interesting because while you were talking, that's all I could think about was that I realized that I was asking people questions and was sincerely because of the format and the persona that I was taking on as a podcaster, where I am supposed to be curious and inquisitive and uh complimentary. That was actually more engaged with the person who I was talking to and
Yeah.
more of a participant in the conversation and more interested. Did not have that feeling where if they were saying something to me that I knew the answer. I
Yeah.
I was taking on the role of the receiver. And
Totally.
so and then I realized I wasn't doing that with the people in my house, you
Mm,
know? Like as
mm,
much. Like
yeah.
I did, but like I was like it was like so when you're talking about the asking questions,
Yeah.
like do you think that focusing on that maybe we can use that as a mantra almost, like to seek to ask questions, do you think that that is will lead you more to maybe a life of openness
100%.
and love?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think many of the questions that we ask are thinly veiled judgments. They just are because we already have the answer or we've already drawn the conclusion. True curiosity is like asking the question and being radically available to whatever answer I get. Like that's true curiosity. And start to this is something I work on with my clients of like notice if you're asking a question from a place of judgment or a place of curiosity. You'll know it's energetic. So, and sometimes it's tone of voice. So listen to this. Did you get your homework done? Hey, did you get your homework done? Same words, intonation is different. The first one is, I know you didn't fucking do your homework and I'm pissed about it. And I think you're a slacker of a student. The second one is, did you get your homework done? I actually want to know a yes or no. If it's a no, then I continue to ask, what got in your way? Is there anything that I can help you with so that you do get it done? Is there anything in particular that you're struggling with that I may know? Oh, math? Yeah, I'm not going to be much help. Then it turns into a conversation. And I think kids are a great place to play with this because as parents, our job is to keep them alive and to open up the doors of opportunity for them. And we think we know what that is. And I certainly did. And we limit them in the process as opposed to coming at them from a place of true curiosity to understand what their experience is. And then we can guide them from there gently without manipulation, dictation, control, etc.
So how do we in regards to parenting, how do we take that idea of bringing curiosity without, I don't know, I found that I've like tried this and it's really worked. And then I found it in other ways, just in regards to parenting. With other people, it's fine, like kids though, they can be fucking assholes. So you're like, hey, what can I help you with? And or like, an example with my daughter is like, she will batter me over the head with, well, you told me that I can always ask questions. And so I'm wondering, the way I deal with that is I'm like, yes, you can ask the question, but once I've answered it, then we don't have to keep going down the rabbit hole. So how do we stay out of the rabbit hole, or what, in your opinion, should the rabbit hole keep going? Should we keep going until 9 p.m. with the rabbit hole? This could lead to a rabbit hole.
This could lead to a rabbit hole. There is a delicate dance, and I don't know that I, do it perfectly with, as a father, around, you can call it boundaries, you could call it parameters. I just think of it in terms of, there's a point to which I will go. Like I will go. And there are certain things I won't indulge. And the things that I won't indulge mean there's something in me that's telling me this isn't going to be good for you or for me if we keep going. And that could be conflict, and even if you look at child psychology, the kind of when I was raising kids and they were little, it's like you put them in timeout. It's actually switched to now you put yourself in timeout. As an adult, you actually create the space yourself, because what we don't, and we're not doing it to punish the child to so they come up, so we abandon them. But what we're saying is enough.
Separating yourself instead.
That's it. And this goes back to what you were saying about other people as well. I do think that we have to be mindful of, the energy of others and what we're willing to take on and what we're not. And there is no playbook for that. That's again, checking in with ourselves of what feels good, what doesn't feel good, etc. And, and with kids, I think that, the primary thing is, emotions are completely okay. They're just okay. We didn't get that as kids, and I'm not saying this is a slight against our parents, just generationally, that wasn't
right.
It. Like, especially boys and young men, as they grow up, there's certain emotions that they're not allowed to express or show. And again, that's where shadows get created, and then they get expressed in these sideways ways. And so as we're going through that of just like, emotions are okay, and I have my limits. And those limits could be because I'm tired, because I'm hungry, because I've had a rough day, or whatever else.
Yeah.
And you need to have limits too. And so, so kids are kind of learning what they can indulge in themselves and what they can't. What just takes them down a rabbit hole so deep where it's just like, all right, now it's just mental masturbation, and we're not actually having an experience, we're creating it.
Yeah.
I'm laughing, like, as you were sharing the experience of Lily, I'm thinking about her. She sent me no fewer than 10 texts asking me to take her to Taylor Swift in New Orleans for our birthdays. And I was like, damn, like the persistence, the tenacity, I actually loved it. And I can imagine that's a lot to wrangle on a daily basis for you.
Oh yeah, man. I know. And I like see it. I'm like, I had an experience with the horse. And so I see that horse in myself everywhere. And totally. I see it in her with that same exact, where she's like, I'm going for it. You guys aren't fucking going for it. I am going for it.
Exactly.
And so it's like, definitely, like, I'm very impressed and honored by it. And at the same time, I'm like, all right, fuck. I love what you were saying about being, am I tired? Am I hungry? Being aware of ourselves, and because I can tend to get like wrapped up in the idea of like an Eckhart Tolle or one of these guys, which is why me and Aaron try to make sure we keep the Buddha in his place, with how he left his family, because I can tend to get wrapped up in this idea of like, no matter what, you are present and you can do whatever the fuck, and so like it becomes hard. So for you to say that another parent who I view as having more of a deeper understanding of these spiritual principles than I do, saying that no, sometimes you are tired, and sometimes you are, and those are things. This is somewhere I'm not willing to go. That's extremely helpful.
Bingo. And you think about some of these teachers, Jesus, Buddha, Eckhart Tolle, they were fucking parents.
No kids. Ram Dass didn't have kids.
Bingo. And Ram Dass, like, actually he did have a love child.
Oh wait, yeah, he did.
But he never parented him.
Yeah.
And so, I love their teachings. And I think part of me, and again, this goes back to my work that I do with executives, is like, but like, get in it. I mean, Ram Dass said, you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Right.
And what he's pointing to there is like, yeah, we have our limits. And when we do hit our limits, we have to take space. I don't have the answers to your questions, and you keep asking them. And either I've given you everything that I know and I don't want to talk about this anymore, or I'm too tired, or whatever else. Like, we have to do that. And we do it with compassion without making that child or person wrong, and without making us be an asshole, just being like, I'm maxed here for whatever reason. Maybe it's my personality. Maybe it's my genetics. Maybe it's, fill in the blank. We've got all kinds of reasons, and it's important to own that, and then to remove ourselves from the situation, as opposed to what we typically do. We make the other person an asshole, or we shame ourselves, and then we're fucked, because then it sends signals of somebody did something wrong. No, somebody just doesn't have the capacity, and that's okay.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you notice it, take a timeout. It's probably a good, easy way
Totally.
to remember.
Bingo. Yeah, the other night, I mean, my kids could tell you this. I'd worked out early and then had like 5 calls. I was a zombie by the end of the night. And the kids are like talking to me, and I'm usually pretty engaged and like can ask questions and like stay with them. And I was like, Ava had told me something and I completely spaced it. And, there was just like the next day, she was like, I told you this yesterday. I was like, when? And she was like, when you were walking around like a zombie, like clearly not listening to me. And, and then it becomes like, and what I should have been, I was pushing through at that point. And, they know I went to bed at like 8:30, which I never do, because I was just like, I'm no good for anyone right now.
That's good, man. That's good. I think that I got about 2 more questions I really want to get to.
Yeah.
Are you okay on time right now?
Yeah. I've got something at the top of the hour, but I'm good. So I've got 34 minutes. We can use as much or as little of it as you want.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. And then, maybe we could save these for a different time, these other ones. But I feel like we covered most of it, and people got to experience you, which was the most important part. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you can do this. You take people on spiritual journeys, is my understanding of it. And you can do this with just one person. You can do it with multiple people. You walk them through deep parts of their past to help them heal. Sometimes this is chemically assisted. I'm wondering if that's what you do. If I'm wrong, correct me. But if that is what you do, or whatever it is, would you be able to do a version of that with me as your subject on the podcast?
So I'll answer the first question first. Yeah. That is part of what I do. It's a small kind of part of what I do, but I do from time to time, either my clients or other people that are, referred to me, work with substances. The only 2 that I ever work with are MDMA and psilocybin. That's what I've been trained in. That's what I have the most experience with. And frankly, as a white Western male, the only 2 substances I would feel comfortable utilizing, both within kind of my training. I work with a psychiatrist who screens everybody first to make sure that, there's not medications that are going to interact, or that they don't have, highly traumatic pasts that are going to come out in those spaces, because, essentially what's happening there is just the default the default network in our brains just quiets or shuts down completely. And the beauty is then you have access to other parts of your brain to work through things. So yes, so that is part of it. And, my process with that is I really, really trust the medicine. Sometimes I talk to people, sometimes I don't. I just allow them to have their experience. If something scary comes up where they need support, sometimes that's, a hand on the chest, a hand on the head, of course, making sure that, all consent is kind of covered, asking them what they need. Sometimes it's them talking and me asking questions as they explore something that comes up. But a lot of the time it's silence. It's just me, creating the right space, having the right music, and then guiding the energy in silence, which I view as kind of a sacred experience, honestly. And again, as we went back to, I don't want to ever influence anybody in that space. Maps just went through a whole like debacle with the FDA on using MDMA in a therapeutic setting, and it was rejected. There were a lot of things wrong with it, double-blind research, et cetera. But one of the problems that I have with it is actually their protocol. To me, it's too involved. There's too much talking, and these are psychedelic zealots who want this stuff to get out, and then they're saying, and we're using it for therapy. No, you're just kind of like really excited about drugs. And not to say that you don't want to help people, but like it starts to get real screwy. So for me, silence is my favorite. And then integration afterwards, what came up. But I never want to influence somebody too much in that space. So that's that. When I'm working with somebody one-on-one, I do look at it as a mini journey, but it's much more interactive. And so I'm just going to be asking questions, a ton of questions. I may be sharing insights, but I'm going to be asking questions because what I want, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about, 30, 45 minutes ago, the answers reside within us. And we spend our entire lives like metabolizing external answers. This is why religion is so attractive. This is why our parents are so influential in the way that we view the world, because we're just copy and pasting and taking those things on as our truths, as our stories, as our beliefs. And sometimes they're really good, and sometimes they don't serve us. And my belief is that it exists within us. You think of our bodies. Like, we can break fucking bones and our body knows how to heal it. You fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
A bone's essentially a piece of wood. All right, it's way more complicated than that. I get it. But like, a bone's a piece of wood, and our bodies, with all we have to do is create stability, and that bone will heal itself. And Joe Dispenza takes this to like the nth degree, right?
Yeah.
And I like, he's onto something. He's kind of kooky to me, but like I've done his meditations. So your experience with the horse as a result of Joe Dispenza to me is real. And that just means that like we have access to way more answers and healing, emotional, physical, etc., within us. And we've got to quiet the noise and allow our bodies and our minds and our spirits and some fucking unfathomable, call it God, call it whatever you want. And that's what Joe Dispenza is accessing. That's what, I think the great spiritual teachers are accessing, available to us if we just get still enough. So if you think about setting a bone, what's a bone have to do to set? It has to be still. We have to be still. And for me, who's like, I'm active, I'm quick, it's hard for me to stay still. This is why meditation has been so good for me. All we have to be is still. We need more stillness so that the healing can occur. And I don't ever want to, in journey space, medicine space, or one-on-one, I want to create stillness. Shut the fuck up. Listen to yourself. Listen to the world around you. It will give you a fucking horse. If you get quiet enough, it'll give you a horse. It'll give you something else. It'll give you an idea. It'll give you an inspiration. Pull on that. I think one of my favorite mainstream books that's come out recently, which I shared with you, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. That's it. Like, that shit's floating around us at all times. We just got to get still enough to listen. And then when something really excites us or inspires us or fill in the blank, pull it down. Pull the horse in. Pull that idea in. Oh, yeah. And like plants are attracted to light. They're attracted to soil. They're attracted to one another. And they follow their attractions. And that's actually what allows them to grow. We don't follow our attractions enough. And frankly, to me, attractions and aversions are actually together. And so part of my work in journey work with an individual. So if I did this with you on a podcast, my very first question would be like, tell me something that pissed you off in the last week. You'd have something and we'd go into it. And I'd keep asking questions upon questions upon questions, just like going to the doctor. Doctor, you're like, my arm hurts. Doctor starts poking around, like, oh, hurts right there. Great. That's where the doctor's going to pay attention so that he can help you, she can help you heal. Emotions are no different.
So is it something that you can do I mean, it seems to me like something that you could do with someone. Because for me, I am somebody who cannot, or well, chooses not to uh, take any kind of chemicals except like caffeine into my
Yeah.
body at this point. Just because of my own experience with them has been mostly I associated as like you were making that distinction between, which I think is beautiful, medicine or drugs. My experience has been that I usually just end up considering it drug and going all the way with it.
Totally.
Now I believe that there are ways to like, that people can recover in that way and end up viewing it as medicine. I'm scared shitless to try.
Of course.
So, but I believe that in my ignorance that you could do this to some extent because you just talking about it just now was like I was like, oh shit, yeah, I can feel the thing happening and where I'm like, feeling this connection. So could you do it with somebody without chemical assistance? Or is that kind of the whole point of the thing?
I think a chemical assistance is a turbo booster.
Okay.
And
I gotcha.
a turbo booster is just faster. It's just faster, but it's not necessary to make a car go or whatever the vehicle is. And so your example from the very beginning of the meditation in that space and the horse that came to you wasn't chemically assisted.
Right.
It was breath, it was meditation, it was tapping into chakras, it was all of this other stuff that is not chemically, it's breath. Like I've had wild psychedelic experiences doing breath work, like really intense breath work, big releases emotionally in breath work that are comparable to what I've experienced in psychedelic spaces. And so, yes, that there's all kinds of methods that have been around for thousands of years that have been practiced and brought into the human experience. And with some of my clients, I mean, 90% of my work is just like this, just one-on-one over the phone, over Zoom. And, some are just interested in being better executives. I've got no problem with that.
Right.
Some they want to get weird. They want to unpack things. They want more access to the mystical. They want more access to themselves. They want to understand, how do I hear that voice and how do I follow it? Yeah, that's exciting to me. And frankly, as in my work as an executive coach, I like that better. I think as I age and as my work evolves, I'll probably be doing more and more of that if I had to guess. And right now, I'm totally cool with the executive who just wants to know how to have a hard conversation with a difficult employee.
Yeah.
And to do it with compassion as opposed to control, power, or control and force, etc. Yeah.
Right. Which even if that's like, even if the motivation is manipulation, like it's still creating a more positive work environment.
It is. And I talk a lot about manipulation because that is all most of work is. And I actually make the distinction between force and power. Power has no manipulation. Power just is. Gravity just is. It just is. And we have more power than we access. Where we confuse it is we use force. And force is manipulation. Force is, I have an outcome that I want in mind, and I'm going to squirrel my way to it. That's force, and that's manipulation. So when I'm working with it, so even with executives who want to manipulate and want to force, I actually never indulge it. And if they're saying something where I'm going, you're manipulating towards an outcome and trying to control variables that you can't control, most notably another human being, fucking stop. Because you're gonna drive them crazy and you're gonna drive yourself crazy, because as much as you want to control that person, you may create an illusion that you have for a short period of time, but that shit's not sustainable.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's the same way with kids. Same with kids. Now, Zoe can hear me right now, so I'm going to say this, and I think she's okay with me saying this. Zoe was a solid D- student in high school. She was a really, really good D- student. She just finished her first semester of college with straight A's. There was like a part of me. I trusted her. I trusted how smart she was. Did it scare me? For sure. Like D's, like I haven't had a D since I was like a sophomore in high school. So it scared me, but that was just me. That was just my view of the world and what I think is like valuable. And I do think the grades are valuable only because they're an indication of comfort and success. And I think that she would validate me on this. There was never any force to get grades different than she was doing or to do it differently. Now, there were a couple times where I was like, you got to get your shit together on this thing. But like, I actually stand by some of those. But like broad, I was letting her feel her way through and not getting too attached to the outcomes that I want. I'm an academic at heart. Of course, I like good grades, but I trusted her process and and guided her where she needed, nudged her where she needed, but allowed her to have that experience. And now like there's a thriving occurring that is like, and I'm not going to take credit for that, but I will say I could have fucked it up. I could have fucked it up magnificently because there's a part of me that loves control and and I have a heft to me that I can apply to a situation, and I never want to do that to another human being, particularly my children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, I'm.
Is that accurate enough, Zoe? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, she's validating. Good.
Well, it's so beautiful, man. Like really, just to allow your kids to go through it and to trust them. We have a we had a certain amount of that in our parents that I experienced, but we also had a good example of an aunt doing that as well. And I definitely try to apply that as much as I can as well. It's like because the grade it's hitting on your ego. It's hitting on, for me, it's hitting on my ego. It's hitting on concern for like the preservation of self, like that I'm projecting onto my kid. Like if they go out in the world and fail, then I fucking failed.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of that, like there are times, particularly when I'm decorating my house or parenting my children, I'm like, what would Trina do?
Right, dude.
That's our aunt, because there is like, Jesus, like, I mean, a universe of wisdom in that tiny little being. Like, incredible. Yeah. So we have had examples, and there were certain things that our parents did too that really allowed us to be who they were. There were certain things that didn't allow us, and but I could use everything that I said to unpack the why on that one, and I don't think that's them.
No, I don't either. I don't even know. I think I might have put this in the questions that we didn't ask, but yeah, there's a large part of me that feels like that specific thing is why religion can be harmful. And I mean, really just a firm belief without questions. God, like you said it, man, like without questions behind something, can be so damaging to people. And I feel like it was damaging to them maybe, and they didn't realize it, but
yeah. And I get it. Like, it saved their lives probably quite literally in some ways. So of course they're going to grip onto it. And I will say this about our parents, that, the thing that's most important, I think in life and certainly in family, is love. And they got that one right.
Yeah, they did.
And they still do. And so to me, it's like, if you can get that one right, like I can navigate the rest. And, especially by doing my own work and my own reflection and my own kind of unpacking, I can strip all of that away and like deep bow of like gratitude. Like, thank you. You just loved the shit out of me, and you still do.
Well, and I think too that there's a certain aspect of that that's so human, where it's the same thing, the same dissonance I feel with Eckhart Tolle, where I'm like, I don't want to get too personal here, but like what we were just talking about, where maybe a letting go is more the answer with parenting. Well, I grab on all the fucking time. So like there's a certain amount where in my parents, I want my parents to be relatable. I want to be able to say to them, like, I fucking bent over and grunted and wheezed and then yelled at my kids today because of back pain. And they're like, oh yeah, I know about that. I want them to be able to say, yeah, I know, or I fucked up too, or, oh, here's how I ended up dealing with that 6 years later, or something like that. That is fucking powerful. So it's like you were saying in the love aspect, they got that right. Like, I also feel like they got it right as being human, as finding a thing to hold on to and clutching onto it for dear life, and like it fucking saving their lives, and like also it hurting people around them. But like that's there's so many things in my life I could point to right now that are doing exactly that.
Bingo. Totally. Totally. Yep. Without question. And yeah. And that's, scary. It's scary. And, I think, the 12 steps are probably the West's most significant contribution to spirituality in the world. Like,
yeah, dude.
Awesome. I believe that. You could say like there are American religions or American spiritual movements. Fuck them. They're all derivative. The 12 steps are unique. And I think we're seeing more and more. And I know this is true for me. I've never been a part of a 12-step program, but I have been a part of groups. That was just like probably an expensive tech way to sit in a 12-step program.
Yeah.
as I was unwinding, because what do we get when we sit in there and we explore those principles? We just get validation, we get support, we get to be seen in our mess. So what you're pointing to I want to say this to my parents and I want them to be able to hold it and be like, yeah, man, it sucks, doesn't it? Here's something I've learned, or here's something I know, without trying to fucking fix me or make me feel better about my bullshit or validation or reassurance or anything else. I don't want any of that bullshit. I want to be seen in my muck. I want to be held in my muck. I don't want to be in my muck. I want to know that your muck is probably pretty similar to me, just with a slightly different flavor. Then that's where the magic occurs. And that's where I actually feel supported and seen, which is what all of us want. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, man. All right. Well, let's close it with that, because that's a mic dropper. Well, we've had about 13 mic droppers here from you today, Gentzy. So I really fucking appreciate you bringing your wisdom to the podcast and to my life. So I guess final thoughts. Do we find you online? Do we seek you out to take us on as clients? How do we get more of you?
Yeah. I stopped doing social media in 2020 for a variety of reasons, which I won't get into. Maybe I'll get back on it at some point. Primarily, I work word of mouth. And then I have a website. Okay. It's lightly.live.
Lightly.live.
Yeah, Lightly is the name of my coaching and consulting practice. It comes from an Aldous Huxley quote from Ireland. Basically is just Aldous Huxley, I think, not just as a psychonaut, but also as a writer and just a thinker. He was ahead of his time. Like he was onto some things that I think are now becoming more a part of the collective conversation. And there's just a quote from Ireland where it just talks about like, hey, like, don't dismiss things because they're difficult, but also don't hold them, don't take them too seriously. Like move through it lightly. And this is what I'm talking about with like, we grasp onto things because they feel protective or because they feel right or because they feel really serious. And as soon as we grip onto something, we're not going to be able to see outside of the blinders that they create. When we hold them lightly, it doesn't mean that we dismiss them. It doesn't mean that we toss them away. It doesn't mean that we don't feel like they're important, but we hold them lightly. We hold them lightly, so that we continue to expand, so we continue to learn, and so that we continue to see all of the possibilities that exist for any particular behavior that we want to engage in. And so that's why I named my firm the way that I did. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. You can also put my email in whatever podcast that you publish.
Oh, okay. And what is that? Gentzy Franz?
It's Gentzy at lightly.live.
And that is LIGHTLY.
Yep. .live.
Perfect, man. All right, I'll put that in the description notes of everywhere so you guys can find Gentzy and maybe hire him and maybe, I don't know, get some of the free fucking advice I just got. I don't know. Hopefully not. I want you to pay him. All right, brother. I love you so much. Thank you so much for coming on.
I love
It's been
you.
wonderful.
Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, it's nice to be able to just chat one-on-one without kids running all over the place.
Yeah.
Yours, mine, 9 of them between us. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot of kids.
Yeah, for fuck's sake, man. Yeah. Yeah, keep it in your pants, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just A, B, and C.
We were good Mormon boys in that sense. We multiplied and replenished the earth.
That's right. That's right.
With good humans. All right, man. I love you. Thank you.
All right. Love you, Gentzy. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye, Johnny.